Welcome to episode 191 of the Necronomid.com. If you're thinking of starting your own podcast, you should check out the show notes from this episode. You can get up to 2 months of free hosting from Libsyn. You'll have access to critical stats, helping you launch your podcast, grow your audience, and bring your podcast to life. Go check out the show notes for the Libsyn promo code and start podcasting today.
Horror on Main, a new weekend convention for the horror community. We explore all the shadows within horror entertainment. From idea to product, there are many people behind the scenes, including writers and actors, but also artists, publishers, directors, and composers, and we're bringing them to you. Join us Memorial Day weekend 2023 in Hunt Valley, Maryland. Come to the block party and meet your new neighbors. See horroronmain.com for details.
I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I've heard a rumor that Sydney Breyer is alive.
Hello, je suis Don Guillory, je suis un auteur, historien, prof d'histoire et
Oh, this is very interesting what he is doing right now. One of the hosts speaks in the English language, but the other has gone on to speak in the French. So let us watch and witness. Oh, yes, he is hitting his head with the book now. I have never seen this. This is lovely. I love this.
I'm dying over here. Oh my God. I just want to say that I know the spoiler of what the English language does, and I still chose to speak English. So what does that really say about me?
Oh, man.
So that was our first guest of the day. Our second guest is Clay McLeod Chapman joining us now.
Oh, I don't know who that was over there. Hey, everybody. My name's Clay. I think I get to be here because I write a couple, spooky books, comic books. Recently, last year, a novel that I wrote called Ghost Eaters came out, and it'll be out in paperback pretty soon. This year, September, I have a new novel coming out called What Kind of Mother? And it's from Cork Books, and it'll be on shelves September 12th. But we're not
Nice.
We're not here to talk about my books. We're here to talk about PONTYPOOL.
Well, I mean, we got to talk about your books too.
I guess we could chat about the books, but I don't want to infect anybody listening to us with my words.
Oh, no, I completely disagree. I think we should infect everybody and just keep you talking. So tell me, Clay, why did you pick this film?
I mean, other than it being an utterly phenomenal movie, like I love this film. Any chance, any excuse I have to rewatch it, talk about it, mouth off about it, I will happily do, because I mean, I know it has its kind of place and its fandom, but I always feel like the more you can spread the word, spread the virus, it's all for it. I'm all for it. I guess the reason why I wanted to pick it for this evening, it's funny because I'll bring up two quick things, and one of them is just kind of short and sweet. I'm working on a new novel right now that I don't think I can like talk about it, but
Sure.
It kind of theoretically deals with like social plagues or different kinds of the spread of a contagious element that may or may not be biological in its genus, which is just what the world needs right now. It needs another pandemic book, right? But it's not a pandemic book, I swear. But so like I've been kind of like delving into the not contagion books, but social plague books, social plague films. And I feel like, PONTYPOOL is right there at the front of it. Maybe Cell from Stephen King. There was this wonderful graphic novel comic called Memetic by James Tinian IV. And then something like, even like The Empty Man, I feel like could kind of almost fall in this category. But I just think Pontypool kind of kickstarted something. And so, yeah, I think it's kind of there at the vanguard of social plague films or books.
Nice.
But I got to like co-write a podcast of all things for
I was hoping this was going to come up. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Can I talk about
it? Please do. Yes.
Okay. Because I do think it's kind of a great. It's like, I mean, we're all taking liberally from Pontypool now, or I am. But I wrote a podcast called Quiet Part Loud, and I wrote it with this fella Mac Rogers, who's amazing, and you should all kind of go seek out his kind of podcast input in the world, which is pretty plentiful. The two of us wrote this thing for Monkey Paw, which Jordan Peele produced it. Gimlet Media kind of produced it and assembled it, and Spotify released it back in good Lord, November of last year. And it all kind of revolves around one of these, proto Alex Jones, kind of proto Tucker Carlson, proto Joe Rogan types, like a talk radio show host who, may or may not be the kind of the victim or the kind of like someone who's kind of in the crosshairs of a supernatural entity. But yeah, I just feel like, when we started doing research for kind of pop cultural, map points of this kind of persona, this character, right there at the kind of top of the list for me was Grant Mazzy, from none other than Pontypool.
Oh, absolutely. And two things really fast. You used the word "spread the word," and I thought that was hilarious. So I just want you to know, I'm going to social media the hell out of that while pushing this episode. And then, my second thing is about Grant, and you perfectly led into it. This is literally my first note. I love where he says, you piss off listeners, and once they're mad, they keep listening. They're so mad, they call their brother and make him listen. And I was just sitting here, like, every time I've watched this, not just this time, this line makes me so infuriated every time I hear it, because it's so true. And it is like just obviously has a big presence in the world right now. And
yeah. Well, if you think about it, I mean, look at like Howard Stern. You got all these shock jocks, because that's what Grant Mazzy is. And I remember him talking about it, and was covered in the movie as well, the movie Private Parts. And the issue with him when he was talking about working at WNBC, or as he says in the movie, WNBC, was that management came to him, or was complaining about like the rating, or like the way he was having the show and how dirty it was, and not the profanity, because you weren't allowed, but as far as the topics that were being discussed. And they were looking for a reason to fire him, but his listeners, his fans, would call in and report on the show or talk about the show to management and with ratings bureau or whatever it was, and said that the reason why they listened to him, and I think the average was something like 30 minutes. They listened to him on an average of 30 minutes. And they said that they stayed listening to him because they wanted to hear what he would say next. And the people who were complaining, and they would call in and to the station and complain, or when they were filling out these surveys, those people who did not like him were listening around like 45 minutes. They were listening longer than his fans were. And they gave the same reaction, or the same response, which was, I want to hear what he has to say next. Like, they were tuned in. So it didn't matter like what he was talking about or whatever it was. You had people that were for him and against him that were willing to listen because they wanted to hear what he had to say, no matter how derogatory it was. no matter how offensive it was like no one else was doing this. And so that's kind of what you see with Grant Mazzy, or at least the way he's presenting it and the way that he's interacting with Sydney and what was her name? Laura Ann.
Laurel Ann, yeah.
Oh, thank you. And you see how he's pissing Sydney off, not Laurel Ann. He's not pissing her off because she kind of finds it funny, and it's kind of that dark humor that you kind of develop being in the military. But Sydney's kind of getting offended when he makes these jokes about the guys drinking and about UFOs and all these other things that are going on. Like, she doesn't like it, but he understands what is his audience, at least the audiences that he's had before and the audience that he's trying to build and expand now, that he has to be somewhat shocking, because that's how you're going to get people to listen to the station. That's how you're going to get some notoriety. And it's also, I would even argue that's his way of like trying to escape from what he views as God.
Leave it in. That's hilarious.
I'll leave it in. The phone rang. And that's also how he leaves it as makes his argument of, or you could see him making the argument that this is a way that he'll be able to get away from what he refers to as the dungeon, this basement studio that he's stuck in. And, you can even make the argument that he's in purgatory. He makes that argument of, this is a dungeon, or he's recording from the dungeon. But, if you're going to make that comparison of where he's actually in, which is a church, he's in purgatory, because there's nowhere else for him to go. He's waiting for his next gig.
I hadn't considered that Sydney and Laurel Ann basically represent the audience that's listening. Like you were saying, Sydney's getting pissed off and Laurel Ann finds it funny. And that's the basis of everything you're talking about. So that's really cool that they,
whether they intended it that way or
that.
not, it's a cool touch.
Yeah.
I mean, I do feel like it's a phenomenon that, I wish I was more well versed in this kind of historical context, but I'm not. So I'm going to just cop to it up front that I'm going to get dates wrong. But like, I love the notion of the shock jock as this kind of benchmark of, I feel like the 80s, you really kind of see the rise of, Howard Stern, of course. But even, there's the kind of radio equivalent, but there's also, we have, Morton Downey Jr., Donahue even could probably get thrown in there. But like the idea that like it's, you have to listen because you're getting riled up, and that kind of give and take, that kind of back and forth between the host and the listener, I just found really kind of strangely fascinating. And there's this amazing play called Talk Radio by Eric Bogosian, which was actually turned into a film by Oliver Stone, of all people, I think in like 88, and it starred Eric Bogosian. And I mean, Eric Bogosian in and of himself is this kind of phenomenal, kind of performance icon who, really like the character that he created was called like Barry Champlain. And it kind of follows the kind of standard model of like, radio show host. I mean, total Grant Mazzy without the kind of viral epidemic zombie outbreak. But really kind of like that notion of like, I get them mad and they call their brother, their sister, their wife, their husband, and they tell them to listen. And then all of a sudden they get mad and then they tell someone else to listen. And that kind of infectious spread of listenership is like, that's the model. Like the way that you get people to kind of pay attention is to just rile them up. And, people love to get angry. And, whether that's Lenny Bruce or Howard Stern or, Alex Jones, like it's, there's almost this like kind of rubbernecking sense to it. Like, what are they going to say? Like, what's the hot water going to be here? And are we going to plunge our hand into it?
Well, we even see that all the time. We're both wrestling fans. I don't know if you are, it doesn't matter. But we see it constantly in the wrestling world. And my response is always, you know, this is scripted. Like, what are you mad about? Like, people right now are all mad that the champ keeps cheating all the time. And I'm like, this is literally a staple of the genre. Like, this is Jason at a cabin level of always been there, you know. And but it is amazing just watching people get so pissed about it. And same with anything on Twitter, anything when Trump's involved. You want to see me pissed? Throw Trump on the screen. You know, it's fascinating how even when we know it's happening, we still do it. You know, we still take the bait. Not always, not everybody, whatever. And we each have our thing, but I find it fascinating how it never stops.
Yeah.
And in really fast, in reference to talk radio, also one of my favorite movies, just because of his portrayal.
Yeah.
The thing I love that he does that pisses people off even more is he will make sure he insults them and then hangs up on them immediately.
Yeah.
And I thought Grant could have used that at the beginning of this. I thought that would have been a really nice touch, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I love that movie. I remember seeing it when I was younger and just being kind of, you know, just the nexus point of theater. I mean, that movie feels like a play because it's so self-contained, so, you know, over the top and performative, and like, you know, Oliver Stone gets to be Oliver Stone in that movie. I think it's like early enough, like it's post Platoon, so he's kind of earned his stripes, but it's that weird, like you can suddenly start to see the Oliver Stone that's kind of coming down the pike, like the Natural Born Killers Oliver Stone, where like that hyper ultra kind of stylistic approach. Like I'm thinking specifically about that monologue at the very end where like the, you know, in essence, the kind of recording booth is like a stage and it's just rotating. The camera's just like spinning around, you know, Eric Bogosian. And like you get the sense that like there's a turret underneath the sound stage that this thing is being filmed on. And it's just so operatic and theatrical. Like you know, as a kid watching that, I'm just saying to myself, it's a movie. I know it's a movie, but it feels like something more. But you're exactly correct. Like it's, you know, the notion of engagement with the listener. And I think that's the thing that both Pontypool and these people, these radio hosts have that none of the others do, where it's like there's an actual kind of give and take between the listeners, the audience, and the host that you can call in, that you can actually, you know, basically kind of, you know, either jump into a fight or like, well, I want to talk today about, you know, the lane closure on I-95 or, you know, like, you know, haven't cleaned up that cat poop off of the front lawn, and like, you know, whatever it is, like, and they'll listen and they'll rile you up. And I just love that. I love that. Like, I wish more, like if that's the heel in wrestling, like I feel like the Grant Mazzies and the, you know, the Barry Champlains, like they stir you up, they get you mad, and then they cut you loose, and then you carry that into your day until you tune in tomorrow morning.
Well, and one of the things I like about this wrestling analogy, you know, I was saying we know it's scripted, but we still get angry, whatever. I love the oh no, I forgot what it's called. The chopper. What is it? The Sunshine Chopper or
Sunshine Chopper? Yeah.
I love that, you know, everyone in this town knows there's no damn chopper. If you've been listening to this and you've been in town, you know there's no chopper. Like, you know, and yet they keep doing it. It's part of the performance. It's part of the show. I love that. And I hadn't even considered it until we were just talking about this right now.
The kind of performative element of radio, and how everybody just knows it's a sham, but they want to believe it anyway. It's beautiful.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. It's such a, like, you know, the poor Grant Mazzy, oh my gosh, the actor's name was Stephen McHattie. Is that how?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never said that name out loud, and I'm probably mispronouncing it. But Stephen McHattie, he gives such a wonderful performance as like this kind of fallen. You get the sense that like, you know, he's basically kind of slumming it, like wherever his previous position was. Like this is no longer, you know, the kind of the red carpet isn't rolled out for him in this church basement. But you know, he's going to treat it. He's going to give it his all. It doesn't matter that it's a church basement. He's going to put on a show, and he's going to bring those people back tomorrow. And I love that, because that's the performer in us all, right? Like Howard Stern is going to be Howard Stern, no matter if it's 5 people or 5,000 people listening. And Grant Mazzy's a pro.
I thought it was interesting that it takes place in a church, and that never really comes up aside from a couple throwaway lines. There wasn't like are we safe here because it's a religious haven? You know, there was none of that stuff. And the first time I saw it, I was totally expecting that. And I don't know. I think it's also just such a great place to put him, because I feel like Grant Mazzy's personal hell is in a church. So it just works really well to me.
Yeah.
You look at it this way in when you're talking about the church, we typically see that as a place of refuge, a place of safety, right? I mean, James, no jokes. We see that.
I don't know.
We see that as a place of refuge, but I mean, it's hell for him, because this is not a gig that he wants. This is not a job that he wants. He wants to be at another station. Like he's on the phone with his manager's agent, you know, when he's coming into the studio, and then he even calls the agent at least a couple of times. Like even when that group that shows up in brown face, Lawrence and the Arabians, with Osama bin Laden as one of the singers, you know, he puts them on the phone to leave a voicemail message and saying like, hey, yeah, I got Lawrence and the Arabians here. Oh, and this guy, that's Osama bin Laden. Fuck you. And so just kind of that idea of like, you need to get me out of here. I shouldn't be doing this stupid shit. I shouldn't be in this podunk town at this small little radio station. I should be somewhere else. But yeah, for him, it's this place of hell. And I just love the irony of, you know, it's a dungeon, or he refers to it as a dungeon in a church. It's the basement of the church. And all the stuff around him that he probably doesn't want to be surrounded by, doesn't want to be reminded of, doesn't want to think of. I mean, he's the dude is drinking and smoking in church and hosting a radio show from a place that holds a specific connection, a special connection for a lot of people. And I love how, you know, don't take this the wrong way, I love how he kind of treats it as like, this is just another place. This is a place I want to escape. This is not a place I want to escape to.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's funny because, you know, you do the kind of Wikipedia deep dive on this film and the story. And I feel like whatever kind of historical context we should give to Pontypool, I think it's important that, you know, for those who don't know, that this actually started off as a novel. Tony Burgess wrote this really... I mean, it kind of defies description as far as I'm concerned. Like, you know, he recently, I say recently, but there was an omnibus kind of published within the last couple of years of, you know, 3 of his books. And one of them was this novel called Pontypool Changes Everything. And it is the kind of source material. I think it came out in like mid 90s. And it was, in essence, the kind of the foundational text for not only the film, but a stage show, like an actual play version of Pontypool, which I think is amazing.
Wow.
You know, in terms of, you know, mirrors upon mirrors, like just to kind of go back to the kind of talk radio of it all. Like, I do love that, you know, there are these kind of various modes of presentation for Pontypool. You can read the book, you can see the play, you can watch the movie, and they're all extremely. I've read the play, I've read the novel, and I've seen the movie several times. I've never seen the play performed, but it is they are very distinct in of themselves. Like they're very, each is its own kind of singular experience, and I love that. The book is confoundingly like opaque and surreal, and you read it and it's just kind of if it was just the novel, I don't know if I would be able to kind of explain it to anyone, and I probably shouldn't try. But the movie and the play version, the stage version, are the kind of distilled version, like the distilled rendition of the novel, and you kind of see the kind of thread of the virus or the epidemic kind of push out from the book and take on its own life, which I think is pretty amazing. And he adapted it himself. Like I love the fact that Tony Burgess, got to kind of write and adapt his novel into this film. And the myth goes that it like only took him 2 days to do it. And I think that's equally amazing, because this is a little sacrilegious, and forgive me, everyone, because this is when I get in trouble. But I think I like the movie better, which is a terrible thing to say. And I don't mean to like pick favorites, but I really, it's the kind of like evolution of the thought, the note, like what was there in the book kind of evolves. It like furthers the thought into its like perfect distilled version. And we were talking about H.G. Wells before in War of the Worlds, and I think that like there's something so enticing to see source material mutate, whether it's H.G. Wells's novel getting adapted into a radio play and then a film, and on and on and on. Here we've got Pontypool kind of like mutating into all these various kind of permutations, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
I just like how you're saying that the word literally infected different mediums. That's pretty great.
I mean, metaphor, it's got weight, it's got legs. Like just let it crawl out of the primordial ooze of literature, and it's gonna lose its tail at some point, I guess. And
legitimately, I want to see this play too.
The play's great. You can actually, you can purchase it. I got it online, and it's, we're too early to kind of do spoilers, but like it is different than the film. It's much, much different than the book, but it's like the ending is different than the movie. Like they're all completely different from one another. And it's like, you could, if you were to partake in all three of them, you'd be like, oh wow, that's different than the movie. And like, oh wow, that's different than that. And it's like, it's almost like they're so singular in their experiences that they all have their own kind of little special flavor,
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah. When we talk about the kiss me, kill me stuff, like it is, I feel like it's jumping, but like, I do think that like the play does a really interesting thing that the movie does not, but there you have it. But yeah, you mentioned church. I think it has a total Canadian vibe to it. Like it is it's interesting that they don't speak so much about the church itself as being this kind of sanctified ground. It's totally stripped of its, you never once see, I don't think you ever see a cross kind of like in the background or anything. It feels kind of unconsecrated to me, but it does feel very Canadian. Like it just feels like, oh yes, this is like there's like a kind of gentility to it, like a sweetness to it, where the cynicism is removed. Even when you're dealing with a shock jock like Grant Mazzy, like still like the humor is kind of got an aw shucksness quality to it that and that's not a jab, I swear, but it's even the zombies feel kind of polite in their kind of like overtaking the church.
Somebody write me a polite zombie novella that takes place in Canada, please. And
excuse me, it's coming through. Just trying to eat some brains here. Yeah, in my notes, I feel like if I know Bruce McDonald, the director of the film, will probably never listen to this, but if he does, I do want to pay lip service to the fact that he did an interview where he was quoted as saying they're not zombies. They're actually, he had a different name for them. He called them conversationalists, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, that he didn't think of them as zombies. And, much the same way as 28 Days Later, like you could have that conversation of these not being zombies, but just infected people. I can get behind that. I can jive with that.
We'll just call them ghouls, and then Romero will be happy.
But conversationalists, that's so cool.
I'd say that's a great name.
Yeah. For like the three people who haven't seen this movie, because I feel like everybody who is going to be listening to this has probably seen this movie like a million times. The idea that like here is a plague, a viral outbreak that is, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say it. It's transmitted through language, through words, and not just any words or language, but the English language. And I thought that was, it's rare, but every so often, there's that moment where we're all writers and we all have that moment where we say to ourselves, God damn it, I wish I had come up with that idea. Like I would have, I would kill for that idea. Like I love the idea of a virus being spread through words. Like I would, if time travel was possible, I would, sorry, Tony Burgess, I would totally knock it out and take that idea because it's phenomenal. It's just phenomenal.
It really is. And I love that there's technically a built-in sequel that I've never heard anyone talk about. And that's when Nigel from the BBC brings Grant on the show, he spread the English language, the Americanized English language, to the BBC. Like we could easily launch a sequel based in the UK tying directly into this. And I think that's such a cool nod that there's this little, I don't know if it's purposeful, I'm not the writer, but like that there's the one country that definitely it would affect, like you go Canada, you have a lot of French speakers, you have people that can get around stuff, I don't know. It's pretty fascinating to me. And I wish they would drop another one because I want more.
I mean, what I find galling is that, there's one point kind of well into the film where they start to kind of acknowledge that they should probably stop transmitting. And Grant Mazzy just kind of does the like, oh, to hell with it. We're gonna go live. We're gonna keep doing this. And like, it is, in the face of, being a carrier and in the face of being probably the kind of like the Typhoid Mary of public radio, like an NPR Typhoid Mary. like he still does it. Like you're just kind of, you can see the kind of dawning realization that like, oh, I am a radio host who is transmitting a viral payload to anyone out there listening to this. And, the kind of don't go upstairs moment is like, shut up, like stop, turn the power off and like just hunker down. That the kind of the drive, need to keep on the air and to like keep going. The show must go on like that. It's a perfect kind of analogy for that kind of personality. Like it doesn't matter if they're like spreading this thing wholesale. Like that's like it's more important to kind of keep live and keep going.
Well, and that's interesting to me because he has this this moment where he kind of thinks, did I cause this? And I thought that was such a I'm the center of the universe mentality, and it fits his character so well. But I also thought it was kind of fun because in a lot of movies we would make something he did activate this or whatever, And so I love that we get the scene at the beginning with the woman so that we kind of know, hey, shit's already fucked up. Yeah. But that doesn't erase it either. He could have started it yesterday on the last show,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just wanted your thoughts. Like, do you think Grant caused this, or is he just a narcissistic asshole?
Okay, well, I get that. I mean, with the whole idea of the woman outside, but I'm not necessarily saying that Grant starts, but I think that he feels as though the power that he has with that microphone and his ego and everything that's going on, he feels like he's the reason that this might, not necessarily being spread. I'm sorry, not necessarily being caused, but the power to spread this, right? Because when you look at it later in the film, he goes over this thing of, he has this elation about, oh, I fixed it. I solved it. Oh, I figured out. I've got a cure. And just this idea as far as the narcissism that's developed, or shouldn't even say developed, the narcissism that's part of his identity, whether he realizes it or not, as far as seeing that he's the one who can save everybody. Like the Dr. Mendez can't save anybody. But, this guy who is nothing against anybody on the radio. I mean, hell, we're doing a podcast. But the idea that
saving the world.
But the idea that I'm the guy, I'm the expert. I mean, it's like Alex Jones selling those health pills and whatever else he's selling to, con people or whatever the hell he does.
And what about you, Clay? Do you think that Grant caused this, or is it pure ego?
I mean, I think it's hubris. I think it's his narcissism that makes him a super spreader. And, the film itself kind of lays down the foundation for what you see are the kind of baby steps of this virus, this outbreak kind of insinuating itself throughout the rest of the community. So that woman at the beginning of the film who bangs on, slams her hand against the window, like it's never a kind of direct A to B of like, oh, that, but you sense it's kind of brewing in the background. And, but even before then, like I think the movie has this wonderful opening that I feel like gets a little short shrift because it's audio, and you're basically kind of watching the distortion of an audio line on a recorded monitor. And it's just his voice kind of talking about how, I mean, he basically starts with a Norman Mailer quote, which in of itself is like, want to talk about like those kind of proto-masculine kind of like bravado kind of dudes of culture. But he's talking about the JFK assassination and how like a moment in time, like a singular event, and reality basically kind of distorts itself. Like it's almost like it kind of expands and breaks apart, and it will coalesce again eventually. But in that moment, something massive and substantial happens that kind of rifts the fabric of reality as we know it. And Grant Mazzy is one of these characters that like he is the center of whatever universe he's in. And the dawning moment of like, oh, should we be doing this? Like it is kind of in hindsight, it's always a question, but it's never a like, oh, we should. Like there's never the moment of like, we shouldn't be doing this. It's like, should we be doing this? But the answer is always like, let's keep going. But I think like, yeah, like this movie came out in 2008, 2009. The book came out in the mid 90s. And like, I just think of like where the book started and where the movie ends. And I think of like, 9/11 happens. Columbine happens. I think, we're in the war Iraq and Afghanistan. Like it's like even the film is kind of, it has these tendrils of politics in it, but they're so subtle that I think that it's really kind of deft in how it kind of approaches the notion of xenophobia and the kind of the notion of a like a faceless insurgency. And I just want to kind of like talk about that for a second, because it is interesting how the tech person, Laurel Ann, she just got back from a tour of duty in Afghanistan. A lot of oh my God, there's the guests, one of the weirdest moments in the film. And there's some weird moments in this film, but like, it's just like the most racist kind of like community theater production you've ever seen, with like a Osama bin Laden, like these kids in brown face, like you're just like, oh my God. And but they're so cheery and like, singing this show tune that it just feels like, what alternate reality have we kind of jumped into? But that's all prelude to say, when the outbreak begins with concerted effort, all of a sudden, every kind of like first report or first kind of mention of it, it's a riot. It's a protest. It's kind of an insurgency. And, I think of the kind of world at that point where a lot of, maybe it's the kind of watching it now, but like, it's just very interesting that like the beginning, before we understood what was happening, before this became zombie conversationalists, we thought of this as a protest. We thought of this as a riot. Like this herd of people are trying to like break into this building or break out of this building. And they are, like it has this kind of like glint of politic behind it. And I don't know, like I find that interesting, that's kind of the default, the kind of knee-jerk reaction. Group of people, it's got to be a riot, it's got to be a protest. Like they're angry about something.
Because if you think about it, the Sydney, Laurel Ann, Grant, they don't have a view of this. Like they are blinded as far as what's going on outside and have no idea of the chaos, because they're getting information from other people, from the Royal Canadian Police, the Lenny, what's his name? Lenny, the eye in the sky, the weather guy. They're getting firsthand reports about what is going on, but they're getting descriptions. And so when you've got all that chaos taking place, there's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty. There's going to be a lot of skepticism as far as what's taking place. And even Grant, like while he's on the air, he's like, "Oh, can you describe what's going on?" And he tries to repeat what's going on, but Sydney is in his ear saying like, "Hey, don't say this, because we don't know if this is true or not. We don't know if this is, actually happening. We don't know what's going on." And to her credit, you see how she kind of has this journalistic integrity of like, we don't know, so we should not be reporting this as fact. Like this could be people. I mean, you go back to earlier part of a discussion with the drinking and the fishing and ice fishing and all that stuff, right? So this idea of he's got that issue where he's making the jokes about the ice fishing, the cops and the hostage situation, and it's probably some drunk fishermen, blah, 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 where he's already misreported what happened by saying like, oh, we have a hostage situation. And then he comes back like 30 seconds later and it's like, well, turns out it was just some drunk fishermen and the cops were probably drunk too. And you see how Sydney is still in that same mindset of like, don't report this as news. We will wait and we'll get some information and find out what's going on. But you get the sense from him of like, I need to report what's going on because I'm the only one. I'm the voice, like that, going back to that narcissism. I should be talking about this. And as people are talking to me about what they're seeing, I should then disseminate that information because something's going on out there and I don't know what it is. And all three of them are hamstrung because none of them leave that church. I mean, other than opening the door later in the film, but none of them leave that church to see what is taking place. And the moment they see what's taking place, it hits them hard, at least for Sydney and Grant, as far as like what is going on. But even then, they still don't know. But you even have to look at the mindset that we were all in at that time, because this film, I forgot when did this come out? 2009, something like that.
Oh man, I knew. Yeah, 2008, 2009, somewhere right in there.
Yeah, and we were still in, that whole post 9/11 mindset, right? I was still an asshole about stuff like that. The whole idea of anything happened, it had to be terrorism. Any little thing that happened, it had to be connected. Because I worked at a mall in 2001 till about 2003. So you had 9/11, then you had the anthrax scare, then there was something else that was going. Because I remember like even Halloween was canceled that fall. So all these things that were happening, then there was like the bombings in London, and there were attacks in other places. So being so distant from whatever the situation was, it made you feel as though, it made you feel powerless was one thing, but it also made you feel as though you had that paranoia and that fear because something that was so far away from you still felt close. And I mean, imagine just use 9/11 as an example. We're talking about this film being 2008. Here we are in 2023. Different mindset, different circumstances, a lot of distance between us and 9/11, where if someone were on the phone with you and describing 9/11 or on the radio, because that's how I learned about it at that time, because I was driving around doing errands or something. But hearing it reported on the radio from the disc jockey saying like, oh, we just got word that a plane flew into one of the Twin Towers. And my thinking is, because this had happened in about a year or so before, I was thinking like, oh, some asshole had his Cessna plane or something and flew it into the building, because there was a guy who did that in Houston. He flew his Cessna into like the IRS building in Houston or Dallas or somewhere. So hearing that, I'm not thinking shit's going down. Whereas Grant, again, it's post 9/11. He's looking at a different perspective of, you've got terrorism, you've got all these unanswered things that are going on. So this must be a terrorist attack, or it's some riot, but I don't know what the hell it is. I don't know what's going on. And as a listener, you have a lot of this anxiety that gets built up in you, where you start to question like what exactly is going on, to where you might be glued into the radio. If you're listening to the radio, and trying to figure out what's going on. And you might, I mean, again, different circumstances. Here we are in 2023. I'm going to pull out my phone and then start looking up stuff about a shooting or a riot or a terrorist attack or anything like that. I'm going to start looking that information up and quickly find out something, as opposed to I'm hearing it on the radio in my community that's not necessarily remote, but it's not near a big city, and I don't know what's going on. And we're in a small area, small town, small community, a relatively small community, and all hell is breaking loose according to the guy on the radio, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. Or worse, I hear it and then I go down the street to see, because I might be close to where it is. And I go down to kind of check it out to see, is it real? Is there really a riot? Is there really a shooting? Is there really something on fire? Is the plane crash? What is going on? But yeah, it's interesting to think about where we were at that time, where everything was so chaotic. And I mean, anxiety for a lot of people was through the roof, as far as like not being able to adjust to normal situations or normal crises.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, this movie feels nearly it's like of its time and ahead of its time, because like imagine this movie coming out was it last summer or the summer before, like with if you think of the pre versus post, DC riots, January 6th, pre or post Black Lives Matter protests. Like it's regardless of your kind of political spectrum where you land, like the notion of a massive crowd gathering and over, like, filling the streets or overtaking a building or marching, like it is such a palpable notion now that it goes in cycles. But I feel like this movie kind of predates. Maybe it predates. I mean, Alex Jones was around for a long time before anyone was really paying attention. So, I mean, I'm sure he was kind of simmering underneath the surface of culture, as this movie's being, released and screened. But it feels ahead of its time before the real kind of like the cancerous version of that kind of that radio show host or that kind of talking head who kind of spreads their own kind of whatever you want to call it, the it's a movie that you watch today and it just feels more kind of charged with its kind of politicking, even though the film itself kind of handles it in a very Canadian way, in a very slight, subtle, kind of generous way. But yeah, like if you made this movie today, it would probably be a little too overt and over that, hitting you over the head with its message. It would probably be like Quiet Part Loud, but like it would be like the politics would be on its sleeve, where I feel like Pontypool really kind of buries it deep underneath all these other themes, like language and, I don't know. I don't think it's an overt movie by any stretch, which I really appreciate.
Well, and that was one of the things that really hit me on this viewing. Going in, anytime I watch quote unquote zombie movies now, I immediately think COVID. I immediately think, just that whole mindset of how bad was it going to get and how many people was it going to affect. And that's where I go with zombie movies. And this time, no, I went to how words affect everything and how hate transfers through the English language. How not just English, but I mean, I'm comparing it to the movie here.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like just
English language. It's like it's not French, it's not German, it's just the English language, which feels like it's a statement. Like they never say why it's the English language or only the English language, but it just is. And I feel like that's a big tell to me.
Clay, because if you're looking at words, right, we can even think about the way in which, different words trigger us and what meaning and what connection we have to them, because there are some that may be harmless, some terms that may be harmless, and there may be other ones that cause us to, have a complete 180, like might completely fuck up our day. Because there are a few words that will make me, cringe, that will make me stop. And James, you've heard this story, so bear with me.
I'll just tune you out. No,
but I was leading a tour on the campus of the University of Mississippi, talking about slavery and stuff, and there were these anti-abortion people that were on campus, and I am normally, people who know me, like I'm a very easygoing person, unless you hit one of those words, not the word ignorance, but if you do something that's so fucking ignorant or something that's anti-intellectual, like I will turn quickly on you. If you do something transphobic, homophobic, racist, sexist, like I'm like that, I will turn on a dime to do my 180. So this guy interrupted the tour and trying to talk to some of the students that were on it, and I corrected him and say, hey, these students are with me. They're as part of an educational program, blah blah blah. And so he kind of left it alone. And so when I was leaving, I walked past them walked past this group that had all their stupid little signs. And I have no problem saying they're stupid little signs because it's complete bullshit what they do. And the guy said something as I passed, because he didn't say it while we were looking at each other. He said it when I was like 5 to 10 feet away from him. And he says, well, abortion is the new slavery. I stopped.
Oh my God.
I fucking stopped. And I stood like frozen for like 2 to 3 seconds. And I had to process in my head, don't fucking do it. Don't say anything. Because you're going to be on the news. And another one, I think it was like last year, maybe the year before, we have like these local Confederate groups or Confederate lovers or whatever they are. And it was Memorial Day, and this one jackass was standing out there, and he had another jackass standing in a Confederate uniform. And I'm driving around the circle in town where the statue is, or at least one of the statues is. And he sees me because my windows rolled down. He waves and he says, "Happy Memorial Day." And my wife grabbed my hand while it was on the wheel. And I don't know if this was to stop me from getting out of the car, getting out of a moving vehicle that I was driving, or to calm me, or both. Because I then looked at him dead in the eye, probably like 30 feet separated us. And I said, "Shut the fuck up. You fucking traitors don't deserve shit. Go fuck yourselves. And don't ever wish anybody a happy Memorial Day, you dumb son of a bitch." And then she just like pinched me and grabbed me harder. And I was like, do you believe this? This motherfucker would actually say Happy Memorial Day? Happy Memorial Day? What the fuck is happy about Memorial Day? Fuck them and fuck their Confederacy. And so, but again, that's one of those things I look at. I'm like, you do something ignorant like that, that's going to trigger me. And I think that's, with that comparison, Clay, that you made with January 6th, that's another thing we look at when it comes to how we process words, how we process, the way in which we looked at certain things. I mean, whether somebody uses the term patriot or traitor, or even the word, the name Brandon has a different meaning now than it did post 2021 or post 2020 before the election. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about how words can take somebody from level 1 to level 10.
Well, and this will sound very skewed because anyone who listens to this knows where I am politically. The simple fact that words turn these conversationalists into mindless zombies, like that's so huge.
I feel like, given the zombie metaphor, and I know I'm gonna keep, Bruce McDonald, Tony Burgess, I swear, like, we get it if they're not zombies, but like the zombie metaphor, the kind of the analogy of zombies, it's so durable, and to every generation we receive a new zombie, thing to kind of imbibe, whether that's Last of Us or Walking Dead or the Romero oeuvre, but like they all have their own kind of like this is where we are right now as a culture, and this is why we get the zombies that we get now. And having language seeking like zombies, air quotes, that like are kind of seeking, to infect others by way of the vitriol that they spread or the words that they spread, like that to me feels really, that's amazing. That's palpable. That's like, that is now more impactful than a lot of other zombie films that wear their kind of metaphors on their sleeves, I think.
I really dig what you were saying about how this movie was kind of ahead of the curve, and it really hits me differently every single time I watch it.
Yeah. Which is that's a testament to a great movie that, like, I mean, I do put it up there with Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, where it just, it doesn't have all the answers. Like, I don't think any of these zombie movies, the real palpable ones, don't answer all the questions. They just kind of pose them. And then, I think Pontypool kind of takes a kind of perverse glee, and it's kind of surreal turns. And, it's a confounding movie. Like every time I watch it, like I I get really kind of frustrated at the end, because I think it goes almost too surreal for me, for my taste. We talked briefly about before we started, we talked about the kind of post-credit stinger. But I feel like, the doctor, I can't remember what the doctor's name is, but the doctor Mendez, I feel like so many of these characters and kind of spins that are in the film, like they kind of lighten the mood where, thank God I'm not responsible for remaking this movie, but like were it would just be so opaque, it'd be so dark and grim, because the world's a grim place right now, and this movie would be the kind of, this is what we can use, this is what we can say, what this is the mirror to the culture right now, society right now. But Pontypool's kind of like, no, we're gonna kind of end on a kind of Quentin Tarantino note. Like we're gonna do something a little pithy and surreal, and it's gonna make sense to probably nobody, but we're gonna have fun doing it. And I applaud them for it, confounding and frustrating as it was.
But when I was watching the film, and then us having the discussion before we started, I wrote down, and don't laugh. I wrote down Shakira, and I put down talk about Shakira. Now, if somebody were to look at my notes, they have no idea what the hell I was talking about. But the especially
you just take every opportunity you can to talk about Shakira. So I would just assume
I do, because look, those hips don't lie. And now she's single and I'm married. What the hell's going on here? So anyway, when she was going from Spanish language albums to try and enter into the English language market, she was being mentored by, or she had to go through really, Gloria Estefan and get, some of the connections through her to get into American music. And as part of kind of this mentorship that was this relationship, Gloria Estefan was having her take English language lessons, or she was probably taking them on her own. But I was watching, it was 2020 or 60 Minutes or something like that. And they were interviewing Gloria Estefan about the rise of Latin performers. And, this is when they referred to it, which was horrible wording. They referred to it as the Latin invasion, which is, again, it's horrible wording. Because
I thought that's what they call the southern border.
Yeah, exactly. Because of, the xenophobia and everything that's going, like, it's not good wording when anyway. So while Gloria Estefan is getting interviewed, Shakira's in the background, and all of a sudden she just yells, she yells out, or she starts laughing out loud. And it interrupts the interview, but as part of this program, they left it in. They showed that part, and they didn't cut and leave it on the floor. It included in the broadcast, and she just started laughing because she had an Spanish to English dictionary in her hands, and she was laughing at one of the words, and it made me think of the film made me think of that moment, because when Dr. Mendez is having this confusion, and when Laurel Ann is having some confusion as well, Sydney, there's that moment where they're kind of like, wait, what? Whoa, what is this? Oh, I'm so confused. Wait a second, Mazzy's missing? No, he's just not here. And it made me immediately think about how she was processing and how she described processing the word thought. And she was pronouncing it because of the way it's written. She was mispronouncing it, and then she got it correctly and laughed. And it was kind of like, that's not how this word should sound. Like, the way it's written, it shouldn't sound like this. And so she was laughing at the way it was written, and then laughing at her misinterpretation of the word and the absurdity of the word. And this idea of, we create words and then put meaning behind those words. And if there's a moment in which there's some type of miscommunication, misunderstanding, that can completely destroy a conversation. So if you're talking about English, which people who learn English will talk about how difficult it is because of all the rules that there are in the English language. But then you have all those exceptions to the rule within the English language. They discuss about how difficult it is to become fluent in English, whether we're talking about standard English or we're talking about vernacular English or we're talking about AAVE, as far as African American vernacular English, how difficult it is to learn and be fluent in that world because of the way that the meaning of words change. Not saying it doesn't happen in other languages, but the way in which the meaning of word changes on circumstances, who's saying it, the context of it, or even just the way in which it's placed within a sentence. And I mean, I love that the way that they kind of throw in, I don't want to call it a joke about the American language or the English language, but the way in which you start to think about a word and you think about how weird it is. Like Wednesday. Wednesday is not pronounced the way it's spelled, or February.
Yeah.
Like it should be Wednesday.
Is this about me being born on a Wednesday in February? Because that's a true fact.
But it's just weird how, weird is always subjective, but it's just interesting as far as like how this works. And then beyond even the word thing, I thought something that was really interesting was not just the ending, which it kind of gives this surreal, and Clay, you mentioned Tarantino, but it gives the surreal ending where you kind of question the reality of, at least for me, you question reality of everything that was taking place. But something that happens well before that is this touching montage that just kind of seems out of place, but in place at the same time. I mean, it's
so good.
Yeah. So, you know, the way that Mazzy is just narrating the deaths of people and who killed them, and then who killed the person who killed somebody. So going back and watching it again, I saw how the film itself is demonstrating how the virus is working, even though you don't know that yet. As far as like fully, haven't completely grasped how the virus is working. But you see how, you know, Maggie Smith killed her husband and her daughter and her cousin in the house on this street. And then Maggie Smith was killed by this person. And then you're like, holy shit. Like, okay, I'm starting to see how this worked, how this pattern worked.
It's such a stunning moment. I love the kind of black and white footage, you know, that like they're basically kind of portraits against the kind of bleak Canadian wintry landscape.
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with so much, but even with that montage of the people who've died, been killed, you know, gone on to kill somebody else. You even think about how, you know, these folks are isolated, and this is the way that they're getting this news. I mean, again, to reiterate what I was talking about earlier, you have this moment where it's not just Mazzy and his crew that are blinded to what else is going on. You've got people that are going through this crisis that have no idea what's going on, which is why when Laurel Ann is infected, like she's so confused about what is taking place as the virus gets a hold of her, where she has no idea what's going on. And even Dr. Mendez, he explains like, oh, she's going to follow our voices. So be quiet. And if she can't hear us, she'll lose the trail. She'll lose the, I don't want to say the scent, but she'll lose the trail and go somewhere else because she can't follow us, because she doesn't know where to go unless she's hearing what would become the new host.
You bring up this great point of like, you know, the idea of how information is spread and how people in isolated environments learn about massive kind of societal upheaval. So like I think of like the scene in Night of the Living Dead where, you know, everybody who's survived thus far is kind of like barricaded in this house, this farmhouse, and they're watching the news, and they're like, the news is getting reported to them, and like the newscaster is just kind of like reading it off and like, you know, doesn't know more than what he's kind of scripted to say. And but like that's all they have to go off of. And here it kind of takes it even a step further, where it's like they're peeling back the visual, and it's just radio. It's just the kind of the auditory, which is why I think, it's always great to kind of go back to War of the Worlds and think of, the, not the novel, but think of the kind of radio play version of it, where you're basically kind of hearing this broadcast. And it's so funny. This is personal anecdote. Forgive me, but my grandmother was actually she lived in New Jersey at that time that the broadcast aired on, for the first time, the one time. And, but they were listening. She was listening, like her family was at the radio listening to whatever was on the other channel, like whatever. They weren't listening to War of the Worlds. They were listening to whatever the other was. Benny Hill, or, who knows what, not Benny Hill.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Like just some sort of like, whatever that was. But there's this banging on the door, like it's abrupt, loud, like someone's just like knocking on the door, pounding on the door. And my grandmother's dad answers the door, and it's their neighbors in an absolute panic. They've packed their all, like their as much belongings as they could in their car, and they're like, "We're getting out of here. You have to leave now. The aliens have landed. We've got to go." And my grandmother and her family were just like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "You've not been listening to the radio? It's happening. The invasion is happening now." They're like, "No, we've been listening to Benny Hill or whatever, like the kind of DuPont, radio hour, music hour." And they're like, turn the channel. And so they do. And it's War of the Worlds. And they're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And was it Milburn, New Jersey, wherever, New Jersey. And my grandmother's telling me the story of like how it spread infectious, like the panic, the paranoia of the moment spread, house to house to house. So like, even for those people who weren't listening, their neighbors told them they had to run, they had to escape. And I was just so kind of enamored with that story, because I just love the idea that like, it's our communal duty to like save as many people as you can by telling them to run. The aliens are here. And the next morning they were all like, "Oops, never mind."
I was literally just wondering how many people committed suicide or murdered somebody or got in an accident.
Oh my God.
Jeez.
There's this great graphic novel called The Broadcast. And oh my God, this is embarrassing. I'm blanking on the writer or the artist, but The Broadcast, it was this indie graphic novel that came out a long time ago. But it talks about that thing of like, what if you're listening to the original War of the Worlds radio show and your power goes out halfway through. So all you know is the aliens are here and you got to run.
Oh man.
And then like from there on, the power's out and you're just like, "Oh shit. Like this is that, like, of course the power goes off and you're like, "Oh, the aliens did that." And now things are bad. And it's like all of the kind of the avalanche of, one bad thing after another. And, yeah. So you should check out.
Okay. So I Googled it while you were talking just now. It's by Eric Hobbs, and I'm going to say the illustrator wrong. Noel Tuazon, maybe. Anyway,
Wow.
The art is fantastic. Like this is so perfect for this. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick this up. Throwing it in my cart right now.
It's totally worth it. There was like a hot minute when I probably shouldn't say this, but I was a part of a team that was kind of developing it for film, and it never went. But I just remember like it was a beautiful comic, and Grandma's story was just beautiful. And that idea of like,
this is a great story.
Like I these things happen, like it happened to her. But I feel like the telling of that story to me was just like fundamental in its own way, where it's like, I don't know, like storytelling is so important. And I feel like the things that we pass down to our children or our grandchildren, like, you know, that's something that happened to her. And like, it just sticks with me to this day. And now I get to write these spooky stories, and I don't know, circles upon circles.
Maybe Quiet Part Loud will do this to someone else, and you will have literally passed it on.
Yeah. I mean, Quiet Part Loud was great. It was, I mean, like, they gave us so many bells and whistles. Like, you know, we treated it as if it was like a gazillion dollar budgeted, you know, Godzilla movie, but all with sound. And the people at Gimlet did such an amazing job kind of assembling, you know, they created these sound effects from scratch. Like, they had to make everything. Like, you know, it's so asinine for a writer to be like, you know, and then the car crashes, or, you know, the house blows up. And then someone else has to be like, well, got to make that, got to do that. You know, it's for the podcast, they really leaned into the sound design, and, you know, whatever feedback we've gotten at this point, I feel like podcasts today kind of permit a certain kind of leisurely, like, ennui to them. It's like, oh, I'll do the dishes, or I'll fold my laundry and listen to a podcast, and it'll be a nice, quaint experience. Where Quiet Part Loud is, it just kind of demands you put down your clothes, you stop doing the dishes, you don't drive, like, just stop whatever you're doing and just listen to this damn thing, because it's like it's an earworm that just, like, maybe it's not an earworm, it's like an ear ice pick, and it just, like, is gonna just, like, jab at you if you try to do too many things at once. Like, yeah. So who knows? Maybe podcasting is the kind of next evolutionary step of all this, but I don't know if Quiet Part Loud will. We're more the real jam in your eardrum.
There you go.
Well, that's not an endorsement. I don't know what is.
That's fantastic. Don, what do you got in your notes that we haven't touched yet?
All right. Well, no, Jay, I really don't have that much in my notes. I mean, really nothing substantial, nothing significant. But I do have a question that has to deal with triggers, because I kind of, you know, I mentioned the thing about, like, what would make me do a 180, which, again, it's not a short list. It's almost one of those things of, like, it has to happen for me to really notice it. But these words, as far as the way that Dr. Mendez explains it, and the way that Mazzy interprets it, you have this idea of words are going to, you know, they're trying to figure out what words are going to trigger this infection, right? And I think that would be real representative of, like, words that have a connection to you, or words that might cause you some type of trauma, or to revisit trauma. You know, for the two of you, what are some triggers, and what are some words that would kind of trigger some type of reaction from you?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have any, like, I mean, you hear, you know, what I find kind of amazing about the culture wars we're in right now is that words immediately lose their meaning when they become weaponized. Like, they, you know, it's so much not the word itself, or even the kind of, like, you know, I think I'm thinking of woke, and how woke was, you know, at the time, you know, the kind of the origins of the kind of this recent version of the word versus the kind of, like, the weaponization of that word. Like, it's two completely different steps where, like, you know, I don't know why I'm trying to, like, walk on eggshells here, but, like, the idea that, like, the right could kind of take a word and twist it back around in on itself, so that what, you know, when it had its kind of liberal underpinnings to begin with, it loses that substance, because it's been kind of not undermined as much as it's been given this kind of, like, radiation. It's almost like it's the weaponization of it is, like, you know, you just say it, and it immediately kind of like registers on this level that is like, you have to have an opinion on it. You have to like either argue for it or against it. And but those waters are so muddied right now that, like, you know, it's so hard to even, you know, for someone to be like, well, do you know what the kind of origins of the kind of quote unquote, like what wokeism means and like what being woke is? And I don't know, like I find woke would not be my zombie word, but I feel like it is the kind of most prevalent, like you can see the kind of the evolution of it from one kind of step to the next.
Well, even like snowflake, they tried to use it the same way woke kind of gets people riled and gets them more so on the attacky side. But, you know, I look at something like snowflake, and so then people were immediately like, when you put enough snowflakes together, it becomes an avalanche and we win. And I find that kind of stuff so funny. Like, I know it's on my side, so maybe I'm biased, but it's just such a really funny retort to me. Like, it's like, I'm rubber, you're glue. You know, like, I love it. My trigger is not a specific word, but it is anything against trans rights. If you want to like just piss me off instantly, attack trans rights, and I will fight you to the death every fucking time, because too many people I love are being targeted and bad things are happening. So that's the closest I have, but it's not a specific word by any means.
But that's like, you have these topics, you have these that you can say libraries right now, you can say trans right now, you can say Bud Light right now, and like it's stupefying, because it's like, well, do I, like 5 months ago, did I really feel this way about libraries? Well, no, I didn't think about libraries, but now I think about them all the time, and it's like, like you're kind of like hulking out over these you know, topics that have, you know, I think you could argue like that have very little to do with your life beyond what people tell you. Like, you got to be angry about this. What's your opinion on libraries right now? Do you see the books that they've got out there? Yeah, I haven't been in a library in years. Oh my God! Like, it's phenomenal.
This place still has Encyclopedia Britannica. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So, but you know, it does pull back into the film, because while we're talking about these words, it's the understanding of how these words are being used. It doesn't matter that woke doesn't mean whatever they think woke means. They understand it to mean something. We understand it to mean something. And on both sides, we get infected by that when it doesn't even mean the same thing to the two sides. And, you know, and so you hit this weird area with this film where it just becomes this other level that I don't think any film could actually touch. So I'm giving them 100% on this, because I think they got as close as you can get. No. But it is such a vague, impossible topic. It is like a cosmic horror level concept. If you were to really dive into this, you're going to lose your mind. The idea of how do we not understand something?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
When the doctor was Dr. Mendez, he's having his epiphany. He's like, oh yes, it is in the understanding of the word that the virus takes hold and copies itself. And like you get this, as much as I feel like I don't really love the character of Dr. Mendez, like I love what he's talking about so much, that like he's the kind of expo guy of like, oh yeah, like check this out, like watch this thing. Like we're now witnessing this kind of evolution of this virus, and it's amazing. But it, like that concept, like it's such a killer concept. It's such a killer hook. Like that's what my nightmares are made of. The kind of like a virus that doesn't exist in blood, that doesn't exist in the body. It exists in words, and it's not all language, it's just some words, and that like it starts with terms of endearment like hun or sugar or honey, you know, like, you know, don't repeat kind of terms of endearment, because that's how it gets in. And then once it's in, it latches onto a very specific word. And then you get like caught in this cycle, this kind of like loophole of repeating the word. And like all of a sudden, like you're struggling to kind of make meaning with words. I get mealy mouthed all the damn time. And like, I'm suddenly like having moments where like, oh my God, am I having the thing now? I'm like, am I infected? you basically have like a big brain fart and you're like, wait a minute. What's that word? It's trap. And like, you're, like, and then you need to like communicate. You need to get it out there. You need to spread it. It's like, and if you don't spread it, you blow up. But can we like, I know we've touched upon it, but like Ken Loney and the Sunshine Chopper I feel like that's what makes this movie amazing. Like that's like conceptualness aside, like the kind of the fact that you basically are watching in this movie, you're watching three people listen to another person who you never see Ken Loney, but you hear him go through this entire ordeal in his, what is it? Like I wrote it down somewhere. What was his car? It was a Dodge Dart. And yeah, like you're just like, oh my God. Like I just want to fan.
Just parks up on the hill.
Yes.
I love that he goes up somewhere to get an aerial view. That's such a nice touch.
Yeah. But it's such a like that performance. Like, I mean, like, you've got a dude who's in his car and he's pretending to be in a helicopter. So he's got the kind of like recording going. Like, so it's like you hear the whoop, 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 whoop of a helicopter, but it's just a dude in a car on a phone. And, but all of a sudden you're kind of like it's his reactions. It's basically kind of like you're I'm talking, and I'm just looking down and like, oh my God, did you see that? it's his response that just it floors me because he's just like, whoa. And I just love I love candid moments like that. And like that he like hides in a grain silo. And then like, gets attacked by zombie, conversationalists. And he has to like, one of them like gets in, but he's like all like his hands are all broken and bloodied. And like, he ends up like trying to spread the thing, the virus. And oh my God, we're on the radio. We can do this. This is a podcast. And like, do you guys remember the moment where he's like, wait, he's saying something. I think I should lean in and listen to what he's saying. And like everybody at the radio station, Grant Masley was like, I really don't think you should do that. And he's like, no, I think I'm gonna get really, really close to this dude whose like broken body is right there. And I'm just gonna lean in to his lips. And what is he saying? And I'm gonna do it because we're on a podcast. We can do this. I, Clay Chapman, I'm gonna lean into my mic and do my best rendition of what that dude this is like mirrors upon mirrors. It's the dude who's a zombie conversationalist getting recorded by Ken Loney, getting broadcast through the radio station on the phone for Grant Massey and Laurel Ann and the Sydney Breyer, and they're listening to this. And what is it? It's like I hear a little voice. It's like a voice inside his voice. There's like a little baby inside his voice. It's just basically like, help me. Is that it? Did I do it? Was that?
Yes. That was awesome.
It was so quiet. I was like, help me. I can't do it, but like, for the listeners at home listening to this podcast, the Necronomicon, like, let's know that this is all copyrights to PONTYPOOL.
My favorite thing with Ken is we go through all of this stuff where we love Ken. Ken seems great. And then in this moment that should be super emotional for Sydney, Grant's like, I know you've known him forever. And she's like, yeah, he's a pedophile.
Oh, God.
Like, what? I love this line every single time I see this film because I'm like, where did this come from? Who was like, oh yeah, let's make him a pedophile. Not a real pedophile, but the kind that you kind of wonder. And I love that they hold off for like this moment that should be emotional instead.
Help me.
Because then what's his loophole? He gets infected and was like, it's like a sample, a simple, a sample. It should be simple, a sample, a sample, a simple, sample, simple. And yeah. Just, I live in Brooklyn and I can just imagine everybody on the streets just being like, sample, simple, sample, you know, like kiss, kill, and like just, you know, I just would not want to be anywhere in a dense population. Like that, as you do in zombie movies, you just want to be in the most remote Canadian locale as you can be, buried somewhere in a basement with Grant Mazzy.
I mean, I think that we should just be glad that this wasn't a nationally syndicated show. They couldn't infect everybody. I mean, you know, sure, they spoke to the BBC and probably infected everybody listening to that, but there's no proof, right? Or is there?
They, at the end, it's in the kind of credit roll, right? Like there's like all that kind of audio, and like the Nigel comes back, right? Like they're like he's on the air, kind of. I can't remember what they specifically say. Like maybe Grant Mazzy's dead, or like is he alive? I can't remember how they end it, but there's like some kind of like little detail, little nugget at the end. Like if you listen really, really closely, you'll know what the fate of Grant Mazzy is, and it's thanks to Nigel from the BBC.
I forgot to watch the extra scene this time, and I'm so sad. Dawn brought it up right before we went on the air, and I was like, damn it, I totally forgot about the extra scene.
What is that scene? That scene, I feel like they just watched Kill Bill, and they were saying to themselves, you know what? This is, I do know this. There's like this one little tidbit on that stinger, which is that it was the end of the movie before the credits roll, and test screening audiences or like festival screening audiences were like, what was that? Like what? Like, huh? And so the director made the decision to kind of cut it and then reinsert it at the end of the movie, apparently, allegedly. So they say. So Wikipedia tells me.
I don't know. I don't know if it was supposed to save us or if it was supposed to let us know we're infected. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don, what did you think of the extra scene?
I liked it because, I left the movie playing and because I was listening to all the audio as far as seeing that, it was clear like this, oh shit, I hit my microphone, that this virus wasn't something that was going to be self-contained because it was being carried in the English language, and obviously because they were broadcasting, and that's why the French language instructions were coming in saying stop the broadcast, because they were causing, or at least what the officials were thinking, they were causing this to spread. But I like the extra scene because not that it gives you a happy ending, but it almost seems out of place. But it also gives you this idea that they created their own understanding or reality out of this, because you've got chaos that they're surrounded by. And the ending of the film, or the post-credit scene, is them kind of like, yeah, fuck it, we're just going to go off and do, you're going to be the lady, you're going to be the killer, and I'm going to be this. And it was kind of a cute, funny, goofy, out of place ending that in the long run really didn't matter, but I'm okay with it.
I can't abide by that ending. The kiss me, kill me was so perfect. And I'm going to spoil this. But in the play,
spoil everything.
Spoilers for the play. They switch it. They swap it. So in the movie, it's kill me, which means kiss me, So they kiss.
Yeah.
In the play, it's kiss. Like Sydney, the producer, says, "Kiss me, kiss me." Therefore implying that Grant should kill her, and he does. And so the end of the play is basically him all by himself. Bummer.
I think I like that more. Like I love the scene. I think it's a great scene, but there's a part of me that's really attracted to what you just said too. Like I think I could go either way on this one. Obviously we got the ending we got, but I kind of like both.
Yeah. I guess it depends. Are you do you like your water glass half empty, half full? Do you want to be
I just knock things off the counter like a cat. So I did not know. I did not know that the actor who plays Grant is married to the actress that played Sydney in real life.
We've got all the cool scoops tonight. We're like, we know what we're talking about.
Thank you, Google. Oh, anyway, I want to know, in the play, do they do the Sydney Breyer is alive thing? Because that would be fascinating once she's not alive, if it was still running.
I actually don't know. I don't.
Oh, that's fine.
I don't know. I can't answer with certainty. I should flip through. It's in my hand right now. It's in the script somewhere.
Don, what else do you got in your notes that we haven't covered? Anything?
Oh, there was one other thing I thought about, and this goes back into language and stuff, right? So, with that whole, like you talked about, Clay, with the whole kill me, kiss me, kill me thing. I look at the same way that we kind of use things in slang, American language, whatever. How good means bad, and we kind of just change words around to give them different meaning, to either create something new. Like if you had told me, and this is still one of those things that I try to make a connection to. I'm too old to say no cap. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? But it makes sense to somebody, at least within a certain age group or within a certain demographic. Whereas if you come to me and say no cap, I'm like, I'm fucking confused. So that wouldn't be a word that would, at least what I think, it's not a word that would trigger me in a certain way because it's not part of my everyday usage. I like the way in which they play with the words to kind of confuse themselves because it's words that they're used to confuse themselves over those words in order to stop it from spreading, which I think is an interesting touch. But it just made me think of, or at least reflect on, the way in which we do the same thing with slang terms or phrases, different idioms, the way that we do things. Like if I were to tell my kid, oh, it's raining cat because it's been raining all day. Oh, it's been raining cats and dogs. She would look at me like, what are you talking? Like, it's just rain. Because no one says that with my daughter. I mean, yeah, for the most part, nobody says that anymore. So, we were watching the rain for a little bit. Like for the most part, like, we sat and we watched the rain for a little bit, and she was like, oh, the rain is getting faster. I said, no, honey, the rain is getting harder. I said, you don't refer to the rain as falling faster. It's falling harder. And she just kind of looked at me, and it was almost like, that doesn't make sense. The pace of the rain is getting faster. Why would I say it's raining harder? Or just all these other different ways in which we talk about, something as simple as the weather, or something like the snow, which, Mazzy's character, the character of Mazzy, talks about several times about how, he feels like he's in the Earth's basement because of the way the winter is hitting him. And even beyond that, just the way your culture would be shaped by your environment.
If we're going to kind of keep on the Pontypool tip of, like, if there was a word, like if the infection was in bad, would it be in the bad of like, oh, that's really cool, or would it be in the bad of like, oh, that's really not good? And if you were thinking, oh, that's really cool, that's bad, would the infection spread and would it carry over to you, or would you be able to kind of deflect it? That's bad, man. That's bad.
Thought. I don't have any notes left so much as I just want to say how much I love this movie. Anyone who listens to this a lot knows that anytime zombies come up, I push Anna and the Apocalypse as my all-time favorite. Zombieland is probably second. I would argue that although technically we don't see zombies, this is probably like a solid top 5, top 3 area for me. I really love this movie.
Yeah, no one in the history of your podcast has ever picked this movie.
Nope.
I find that stupefying. This is just like the ripest melon just waiting to be plucked.
But it's good because then you got to do it. See,
yeah.
So it's great.
Thank you for letting me pick it. I was so over the moon when we got to do it. It's been on my a lot.
I was excited as soon as you said it. I was like, "Oh, pick that one." But nice. Clay, do you have anything you want to add to the movie before we move to movie recommendations?
It's the best movie in the whole wide world.
I mean, that's a hell of an endorsement. So there you go.
The best non-zombie zombie movie.
They should literally put that on it. That's great. All right. So I guess we'll move to movie recs then. Clay, you're the guest, so you get to go first. If people enjoyed this, what else should they watch?
I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to repeat myself and say, you like Empty Man, the movie, Cell, Stephen King's novel Cell, but this is strange, but I really like the movie, which I can't necessarily in good conscience recommend to anyone else to watch. But like, if you're like me and you love Pontypool and you want films that kind of deal with kind of social plagues like that, like Cell is an interesting one. It's not a great movie, but there's things in it. There's elements to it that really, had they had $10 million more, would probably have really been phenomenal. So Cell, Memetic, the graphic novel, came out on Boom Studios, did it. James Tynion IV. Really, really like stunning kind of social plague novel, graphic novel. But those are my recommendations. And then what was the other one? The broadcast.
So you actually mentioned, I always do a double feature, and you actually mentioned the one I was going to pick, which I thought was going to be odd because it's not a horror film. It's talk radio. I feel like talk radio should be watched with this. I think they have a lot in common, but do it differently. And I think that they can bring a lot of weight to each other. And so I was gonna, when you threw it out, I was like, oh no, that was my double feature.
Oh, no.
But all right, Don, 666 movies. What do you got?
Let's see. Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead. I know we're talking about conversationalists and stuff, but I'm going to include zombies. The Crazies, Contagion, The Mist, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Fly, because that whole help me part. Help me. The Slither, which is another one I need to go back and watch again because I saw it originally in the theater, and I think I saw it on television one time, and it keeps popping up in my recommendations, so I need to go back and watch it again. The Thing, The Void, Mimic, The Stuff, Chud, Cloverfield, Session 9, and last but not least, James's favorite movie, The Happening.
Boo.
We know you love it.
I'll have you know, I have to watch The Happening again soon because at Phoenix Fan Fusion, I'm doing a panel on the horror movies of John Leguizamo. And when I pulled up the list, I was like, oh, God damn it. But but I love Leguizamo so much it'll be fine. So I want you to know that I'm going to watch it again because I know that will make you very happy that I do that.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned Session 9. That's another one
great.
of my like top films. Great audio horror. This is totally I'm copying to this on air for the first time ever, but episode 8 of Quiet Part Loud has like some total cribbing from Session 9. Like the finding the kind of recorder and pressing play and listening to some kind of old, recording of an ancient asylum, like that's straight out of Session 9.
I love it. We covered Session 9 with author David Sims, so check out that episode, people. So I have another thing I want to ask you about, Clay, and if I'm not allowed to ask about it, we can edit this out.
Okay.
So you have a certain comic that was just announced at C2E2, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you want to talk about it at all on here, or if you want me to edit this part out, or
I mean, I can totally talk loosely about it. It's funny, like It's I've been really lucky to write for Marvel for a few years now, and you never know. You just never know what the call's going to be or when it's going to come. But like every so often it comes, and they'll be like, "Hey, this is the series or this is the event that we're working on, and we have this opportunity to like present these characters or do this thing. And what would you want to do?" And when you get to write for Marvel, it's like always like it's their sandbox, it's their toys, their characters. So you go in knowing that you're playing with somebody else's action figures. But what is super cool, I've written, good Lord, I think I've written like 6 or 7 scripts for this year, and it's amazing. Like, I can't talk about who they are, but Marvel has let me create a whole bunch of venomized characters. I've been given the opportunity to create Venoms, and because I don't think this is a spoiler, but like, it's Venomverse, Extreme Venomverse, Edge of Venomverse, are the kind of various comics that I'm working on. And the Edge of Venomverse is basically like, it's kind of a riff off of the Edge of Spider-Verse, which is another series that I worked on with them. But it's basically like, in this kind of multiverse world that Marvel lives in. What are all the different versions of Venom that you might find in these parallel alternate realities? And I kid you not, I've never had so much fun working with Marvel before, because they're basically like, pitch us your Venoms. Like, what would be the different Venoms from all across the cosmos? And I mean, there's me and this other writer, Jason Holtham, and we basically like spitballed like you would not believe. It would be like, I mean, I can't tell you the ones that got picked, but like, like, oh my God, like some of the ones that didn't get picked are just as cool. But it would be something to the effect of like, I don't know, Venom Winnebago, or Venom, Venom birthday cake, or like, and I mean, like, we just like threw all this Venom shit against the wall, and some of it stuck, and they were like, yeah, do that one, that one, that one, and that one. And so like I basically created all these cool new Venoms, and some of them live, some of them die. the beginning of the series is my homage to The Exorcist, which I don't think is a spoiler. But it's so, I mean, like, who knows? I don't know if anyone's going to love reading them, but I had so much fun writing them.
That would be me. You got to understand, I don't read a lot of comics. So when I pick one, it's because I'm insanely excited about it.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the last time that they announced something like this. And I was like, oh my God, take all my money right now. And this was it. And so I had to tell you that, whether we did it on the air or off. But thank you for entertaining my crazy question.
No, that means
I didn't mean to blindside you with it. I was going to talk about it before we started and I forgot. So
no,
yeah.
It's great. I mean, like, Marvel always kind of puts you under a kind of cloud of, like, a veil of secrecy. But they announced it, and so, you know, I feel like if I get fired, it's my own damn fault. But, like,
scripts are
in, I'm done. Like if this is my last thing, it'll be a blaze of.
It was Sabata.
No, Extreme Venomverse comes out in May, and that's going to be Jester Venom. He's so cool. Oh my God. I don't want to give away too much, but, like, I got to riff off of Edgar Allan Poe's The Mask of Red Death, and it was
oh my God,
cool. It was so,
I'm sold.
Like, that to me was like top 3 comics I've ever written. Like, I just it's amazing. It's beautiful.
That's so fantastic.
Yeah, and then
so my actual question with it was like, would you say, I mean, you kind of answered this, but so we know one scene for sure, but, like, is there a lot of horror in it? Because I feel like Venom would, you know, kind of open the door to that pretty easily. Like, would you consider it a lot of horror or more regular comic?
I mean, yeah, I feel like it's horror. And I believe, maybe I should say, I assume one of the reasons why Marvel kind of invites me personally to write the things that I write for them is because they know that horror is the kind of the place that I like to dwell. And so,
yeah.
You know, but yeah, Venom, like, on its surface, Venom that's like straight up horror. A parasitic, symbiotic, you know, like symbiote, that, like, extraterrestrial symbiote that, like, you know, adheres itself to your body and, like, turns you into like, that's terrifying.
Absolutely. And that's why I love Venom and Carnage so much.
Carnage, good Lord. Carnage is basically like, you know, Venom used to be scary, but let's crank that up to, like, 23 and, like, just go complete psycho with it. And
oh yeah.
Yeah. Good Lord. Lordy.
Well, sweet.
Yeah. But we're bringing the horror back. We're bringing the horror back to Venom.
Hell yeah. I'm down. All right, man. Well, let's bring it back to you. Where can people find you on social and buy your books and all that good stuff?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm even on Facebook. It's usually Clay McLeod. And my website is claymcleodchapman.com. And if you're looking for books, Ghost Eaters is out there, and I feel like you could do worse if you're looking for something spooky to read. You know, there's Whisper Down the Lane. There's way too much junk out there. But in September, What Kind of Mother comes out, and I have to somehow convince the world that they have to read this book, so I can keep writing books, because yeah, it's crazy out there. People need to read this book.
Well, I'm pretty sure they will, and everything will be okay. Go read Clay's book, damn it. All right. So I don't have anything else, so I suppose that wraps it up.
Very interesting. The host he's trying to end the transmission, but he is not completing. He's stuck in the loophole.
I've been very lonely. I don't want to end it. No. So Clay, thank you so much for being on the show today, man. I love this movie, and I loved this conversation even more. So thank you
for having me. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. I guess that wraps it up for another week. As always, I am James Sabata.
Et je suis dans Guillory. À la prochaine.
And I don't know how to say we'll see you next week here at the Necronoma.com in another language, but you can pretend I did.